I just
The other thing is I want to ask David to read his little literary
Speech.
no, it's more than a speech. I'll just call it a tidbit. It's very brief, but it has a lot of meaning behind it. But go ahead.
Thank you so much, Marty. And today I have two tidbits. And the first one is in honor of my friend Michael. Fly me to the moon and let me sing among the stars. Spring can never be as good on Jupiter and Mars. That was for Michael. And now
Thank
for
you.
the rest of you.
Thank you. I think that we'll hook up and become a new Green Valley duo.
Oh, definitely. And here's the other one. It is from Robert Frost, one of my very favorite poets, Acquainted with the Night. I have been one acquainted with the night. I have walked out in rain and back in rain. I have outwalked the furthest city light. I have looked down the saddest city lane. I have passed by the watchman on his beat and dried my eyes, unwilling to explain. I have stood still and stopped the sound of feet when far away an interrupted cry came over houses from another street, but not to call me back or say goodbye. And further still, at an unearthly height, one luminary clock against the sky proclaimed the time was neither wrong nor right. I have been one acquainted with the night. Thank you, back to you.
Thank you. Very, very good.
One
Yes,
a
go
very
ahead.
quick request. David, if you don't know it, for next week, work on Stardust.
Very good. Wasn't that Hoagie Carmichael?
Yes, 1927.
Yeah. Very,
It's
very good.
also done at the very end of the movie Space Cowboys. They do it there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, do you remember a few weeks ago, I said we were going, before we took a further leap into the book of Exodus, we were going to review some of the things that we have been discussing for the past several months. And the reason is that I think there's enough information that everything is a prelude to receiving the first 10 commandments. Okay, and so we're going to, so as we go back through the different stories, I want everyone to think of what messages are within that story. Okay, and that we don't have to be very specific or anything, but the reason for this is to give this more of a purpose. And you may want to rehash some of the things we've said in the past. Yes, David.
I had thought when I was a kid, I had learned that the 10 Commandments, which we are very close to right now, are really in the 613 numbers 25 to 34. And that the first one is a very important one: get married and have children.
Yes, you've mentioned that.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. As a matter of fact, this comes up with the numbers of Israelites, okay, that in Egypt and who are going to proceed out of Egypt. Yes, very, very important one. But there are certain, I said the same thing when we went through the book of Genesis. And we reviewed some of the stories there. But what do we remember from the book of Exodus? And just do a little bit at a time. And I don't want to belabor the subject much more. But what did we learn in reading Exodus 1? This is Moses being born and coming into the world. Okay. What do we remember from that? Yes, David.
I think the first thing I remember, of course, is the Pharaoh's edict to kill the firstborn of all the Jews, and then Moses and the bulrushes, that famous story going down the Nile, steaming down the Nile, and then he happens to be discovered by Pharaoh's daughter, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful story.
It is. It is a great story. So, what are some of the lessons to learn from this first chapter in Exodus? You summarized it very well. There are two things that come to my mind almost immediately, but I want to give everyone a chance to come up with this. David, why does that story touch you?
It touches me because it's optimistic, Marty. It's a story of hope. It's a story of optimism. There isn't even a little humor in it. It's fun. That's what gets me about that particular story. And as Moses gets older and he gets this relationship with Pharaoh, and then the other part is his personal relationship to God, which really nobody else has had. Boy, I don't envy Moses, but I sure am. He sure was brave that he accepted that he had a personal relationship with God.
Okay, but Exodus 1, he, as an infant, okay, there's another cast of characters, and they do certain things. What comes to my mind, and I'll start this off. What hope is one. The entire book of Exodus does revolve around hope, and gives direction to that hope. There's another theme, and that is compassion. Okay. His sister Miriam, okay, comes to mind. And what does she, in the story as it unfolds, she tries to do things to make sure he will survive. That's also a sense of responsibility, not just for yourself, but for your family. And yes, Helene.
That is the female gift from God. When you have a baby, you are drawn to this in a way without words. You nurture, you hope, you do it.
Yes.
It's the female.
It is. It is excellent. By the way, you are very correct. But men have a similar type of experience.
Yes.
The first time they hold a newborn child, something happens that changes everything.
And what do you think it is?
Life. You've helped create a new life. And it's an awesome responsibility, and you're going to nurture that child, everything, to allow that child to become an adult.
But what you're doing is you are revisiting your very own birth.
Yes.
And how you were nurtured as a baby. And this gives you energy and beauty and hope.
So here,
you have to be lucky.
So right off the bat, there are two things that come into this. When somebody treats someone with kindness and is nurturing, it is also giving a message of hope to everyone else around. It's not just for themselves. They're sending, by action, they are showing other people the acts of kindness and hope for a better future. We're not privileged to know the outcome. All we know is is to give the best we can give, and that's the responsibility part. So what else is here? There's protection. Okay. There's a theme of protection. Again, it's the maternal instinct, and as others have pointed out, Helene elucidated that. But it is when you have hope, you part of it is doing what will be necessary, and Miriam does this very well. I mean, she arbitrates a protective situation for the baby that is found in the basket of reeds. Isn't that interesting? A basket of reeds, and later on it becomes a sea of reeds. Okay, so the two are also connected. First of all, what are reeds and where do they grow? Anybody? Come on, you've been to lakes and ponds and
In the
things.
water, yeah, I was going to say that,
Yeah.
in the water.
Yeah. And so the theme of water is also very important here, because we know about the Nile, we know about a well, and so this whole concept of what happens to the Nile, with the plagues. As we go through this, we see that water plays a very important role as well.
Well, water represents life.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. Some people go as far to say it's the Spirit of God. Kabbalistically, they will say they link water with the divine flow, if you will. But that's life. That is, it's another good one. Anything else?
There's a lot of spirituality when one is around water.
Yes. Exactly. What about the slaves? It also mentioned the slavery. Any comments about that? One of the things that are very striking, the book of Genesis ends on a very high note. Joseph is doing things that are good, and then a question is raised. And we have to say, by his actions, did he set up this tragedy that befalls the Jewish people? Unwittingly, he didn't mean for we know from the book of Genesis that he's doing this for the Israelites themselves and his own family. They're going to prosper. But like I said, with parenting, you never know what's going to befall the child in the future. You never know what's going to befall the family. You never know what's going to befall your nation in the future. Things change. Any comments about that? For those of you, I'm not pulling these out of the air. These discussions have been debated and discussed throughout the ages. Okay, this is nothing new, but we want to know why it's important to read this story. So let's go on to Exodus 2. Any comments about Moses and how the story unfolds with Miriam arranging everything for Moses entering into the Egyptian community, and she's behind what the Egyptian princess wants to do, to adopt this child. But if she stops at this point, what could happen to the child? He would be raised as totally as an Egyptian. But what does she do to make sure that Moses still has some consideration of his heritage as he grows up?
Gives Moses back to his mother to be nursed.
Exactly. And he's now going to be schooled in the, if you will, the Hebrew tradition. So because this, although it is not entirely spelled out, we have to read it in at this point. How is he going to know about his family if nobody ever says anything? So, or does anything to encourage this? Otherwise, he would grow up and probably have a slightly different approach on what he does with the Israelites in the future.
Did you say Exodus 2?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is where Miriam winds up getting the Hebrew nurse, as was mentioned, a Hebrew nurse. It turns out to be the very mother of Moses. Okay. And we've discussed that but again, this is compassion. There's love here. There's sense of responsibility. Okay. And in order to really do things in life as a child, you probably need to have that type of nourishment for your own personality. So you may not understand it as a child, but if people are always treating you with the sense of responsibility and protection and nourishment for yourself, yeah, it's more than just feeding the baby. Again, the baby will react to what the baby sees in the household. Not what you tell the baby to do, but what the baby sees is a huge difference. Helene, would you want to say something about that?
You're on target completely. You said it well.
And that's going to come about if you think about the rest of the Exodus story. It revolves around that. It's around doing what other people see. If Moses just said, well, this is what I've been told we have to do, wouldn't have gotten anywhere. He has to show with his own actions that he truly believes and that there's an understanding of compassion and drive. It doesn't come easily. But this whole story relates to some of this. Any other comments? Well, he sees an Israelite being beaten by an Egyptian and comes to the Israelites' defense and winds up killing the Egyptian. And he flees and he comes to Midian and Ruel. And sometimes they'll call, and we find over time, this is the same Ruel that becomes, just a second. I just blanked. On, because Ruel has many names. Horab, which will come later in Torah. And it is also the name of Jethro, Jether, because in the different stories, the same name is used in multiple ways. Different names are used for the same individual. So is this strictly by fortune that he arrives at this location? Or is it meant to be? Again, he's fleeing. Moses is fleeing for his life. And as the story unfolds, he comes to a well. We've discussed the well story, it briefly a few minutes ago. But Jethro, Ruel or Jethro, is a very wise person who also believes in one God. He's a monotheist. And anything else, as the story unfolds, it also moves into Exodus 3. Any other comments there? What happens in Exodus 3?
David, you're muted.
What?
There. No,
Oh, yeah.
David had his hand up and he was muted.
I'm sorry.
Well, I forgot what it was. I was so busy with the muting that I forgot my point.
Okay, was it about Jethro?
It was about the fact that, Moses was able to make friends with just about everyone he dealt with, all the way from God. Not so much the Pharaoh, but he did talk with the Pharaoh freely. He's very honest and straightforward to all these people. When he messed up at the first plague, his first confrontation with Pharaoh, he admitted it to all his people. He said, I messed up, so stone me. And I really enjoyed the honesty of the man.
Yes.
And the fact that even though he is really the enemy of Pharaoh, he treats him with respect all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But of
Yes.
course, the main thing is my personal feeling as to how he treats God and how God treats him and how they become such good friends.
Very, very well stated. Any other comments? Any other messages that we should be picking up from these stories? Yes, Ricky.
Well, you mentioned Ruel believed in one God. And I don't remember where Ruel was from, but could he have been a follower of Akhenaten, who was also a believer in, was a monotheist in Egypt somewhere around this time? I don't know. I don't
know. I do not know. I think that would be a good midrash. You could, who knows? But he was a Midianite, and the Midianites also were taught about monotheism.
Yeah, but who taught the Midianites about monotheism?
I don't know.
You don't?
It may have come through by knowledge of what was going on in ancient times before Ruel was on the scene. It may have come from the fact that he was schooled in this. It's not stated. It's so we would just, it's just midrash. We could come up with any idea we want.
All right. We always say that Judaism, I'll just use that term, was the first ethical monotheistic religion. But Akhenaten was before the Israelites, was a monotheist, and they don't sort of tack the word ethical in front of that one.
And we do not, and remember, we even discussed timelines. They don't jive. And so that's why I say, if we want to be very scientific, we run into this as a dilemma. We can't link what we know archaeologically exactly with the biblical story. But it's the messages that are going to be more important rather than the details. Because the Pentateuch is here not because of the stories, but because of the lessons. It's a teaching instrument. Okay, and we've addressed that before multiple times.
Mhm.
And it's what we walk away from each one of, what we take from each one of these stories. And our minds are such that, well, here's an empty space. Could this have happened? Yes, it could have happened. We just don't know, but that's the beauty of it. We don't go into every fine detail. So again, it's a theme of responsibility. Obviously, there protection of others. Moses protects Miriam at the well. Jethro finds it good because that's his teaching too. Okay, you have a responsibility to bring to your children, your family, and that's expressed in how things are stated during this particular series of passages about the role of Jethro or Ruel or Jether, however you want to remember that. But it becomes interesting. Now, the Midianites, who are they descended from?
Oh, I'll get out my
Oh, you
chart.
don't need the book.
No. I was going to get out my.
Who is Jacob's brother?
Esau.
Esau. And these are the subsequent generations. And so it's very probable that they understood about one God. Remember, you have Abraham and Isaac who spoke about one God. And quite probable is that Esau also understands about the concept of one God, and it gets passed down. Just doesn't rise out of nothingness. It could, but you have to have a reason to initiate a monotheistic concept, because everything else around you is idols.
I'm looking at this, this thing that I pull out every now and then, the family tree. Esau only had 5 wives, and I can't even count how many children are here.
Right, and then the subsequent generations. Right. That's right. And so we put it into context, and we can answer some of those questions. How does Jethro know, or Ruel know about one God?
Okay.
So we can surmise that based on and the Torah specifically goes into all the subsequent generations of Esau. If you remember in the book of Genesis, all these names are spelled out. There's an entire chapter devoted to Esau and
1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
his subsequent
6, 7, 8,
generations.
9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 34, 35. They only have 36. And that's only down like 2 generations.
Okay.
And that are named. Yeah.
Right. So it's just one of those things. So we want to remember, so we can fill in to answer the questions that are raised.
Even more.
Anything else about Moses' time with Jethro? Now Moses is going to have an interaction with God. And God appears as a burning bush, and the bush is not consumed. You remember that. Why is this miraculous event emphasized? What does that represent? Well, we were introduced in the book of Genesis to God, and as something out there that we have the ability to become a partner with. Yes, Suzanne.
Well, I was just going to say that the burning bush that's not consumed shows God's eternal with no end.
Very good. That's one possibility. What else is, David?
I see it as a bit of a prequel where God is starting to show himself or herself to give give Moses and through him the Israelites some time to prepare for the 10 commandments that he's going to be giving. And he's using this and other effects to prepare the Israelite people for what is to come on Mount Sinai.
Very good. Very good. Now, if God is a parent, couldn't he just say, look, guys, here it is. Here are the 10 commandments. When they were at any point, during the book of Exodus or up until now. Why would God not give it to them right away?
There needs to be preparation. There needs to be a build-up to it. It is one of the seminal moments in history and in mythology and in religion. And it just can't happen like you get up and today I'm going to give you the 10 commandments. It has to be prepared for, and in a very dramatic way.
Okay. In anyone's family, think about growing up. You need the examples set. Remember, these people have been slaves. They are told what to think. They are told what to do. Okay? Everything in their lives is controlled. We can think of many examples of that, about the slavery issue in our own country, but in the whole world. It isn't until the 1800s that the world says no. I'll recognize, go ahead, David. I know it's a Wendy hand.
It certainly is a Wendy hand.
It's me. There's two things I wanted to say about making them wait. The first is, in the ed biz, they call it the law of readiness. Unless a student is ready to learn something, there's no way they're going to learn it.
That's
And
right.
then you have to wait for what they call the teachable moment. When that happens, that's when it will all work.
Excellent, excellent. So basically, they have to be nourished. And that is, so there's a responsibility here of guiding these people to a point. It's like guiding your own children to a point where they can understand why you treat somebody with kindness. Why is it important? Why is it important to understand when something goes awry, it's your own responsibility. It is not the other person. You have to take responsibility for your own life. So these are sort of hidden messages, even starting along. And the whole story of Joseph, it has been relating to that. It takes Joseph almost an entire lifetime to get to the point to understand what his responsibility is. So it's something that, yes, Don.
Well, the commandments, that was a transfer of authority from a person to a written law. That's the real significance. And those commandments were preceded by 100, 200 years by the Hammurabi Code that the Babylonians engraved into basalt. And in the Hammurabi Code are most of the Hebrew Ten Commandments. I mean, it's
Yes.
already been engraved. And so this was more a distillation for the Israelites in the particular Hebrew history. But it's not the first time that the law was moved from the mouth of a ruler to another medium. But it's obviously huge importance. And we,
Mhm.
I mean, we have a Supreme Court today, which is still working on that.
Sure. Exactly. You have to, that's going to come up in that discussion that you just brought up is very apparent in the Jethro story, that we're stopping just before that story. And so we can build up and understand why certain things are necessary. Okay, that's the whole purpose of this. What is this going to build up to? David has approached it. You are approaching it. These stories are going to build up to a high point. And unfortunately, the Israelites are going to screw it up. Okay, but that's okay, because that's true to life. We're shown what is a better way of doing it, but we don't, for one reason or another, the human experience has always been there's someone or a group of people who say, well, what about this, and take everything in a different direction, even though everyone knows that they're deviating immensely from the original teaching for common behavior. And by common, I don't mean to diminish it. I mean by, all people. So now Moses encounters God. God introduces himself to Moses this way. Suppose God just came in a dream instead of a burning bush. Why the burning bush? It's described in God's name. That's what I'm going for. Why do you need this miracle to take place? If God came in a dream, does it address the burning desire of slaves to be free?
No.
There's your answer. It's very simple. So there's a play here on the imagery. If you really desire to be free, you're going to have to do something about it yourselves. And this proceeds with God's help, and little by little, God is going to withdraw again. Because so that the people can thrive. So the burning bush it's an attention getter. Okay, yes, go ahead, Suzanne. I'm sorry.
Same difference. I think it also, the burning bush shows that God is real, whereas in a dream or vision, I don't think you get quite the reality of an entity or being in the same way you would in an awake encounter.
Good point. Very good point. And as the story will unfold before we get to there, God doesn't only appear as a burning bush to Moses and the people, but a pillar of fire and a pillar of smoke. Isn't it interesting that we don't learn all these reasons until later on when we learn God's name? Okay, and we discussed the interpretation. I am, it has been described as I am who I am, I will be who I will be. You could also say I can be what? Okay. If I, and so could we see God in the sky? Could we see God in the earth? Could we see God not just as a fire, but a fire is it's all there's a lot more to the imagery of a fire. It's an attention getter, yes, but there's a lot more imagery that is that about a fire. And what are some of the things that come to mind?
Well, fire has many dimensions, okay?
Yeah.
It can be, it could be used to save a life. And if you're out somewhere in the wilderness, you need that maybe to cook, to survive.
Mm-hmm.
And it could also end life very quickly. So there are dimensions to fire. But I think the purpose is to demonstrate the powers of God and the miracle of God.
Very well stated. Ricky, your hand was up.
Yeah, I was just going to say it's got opposite effects. Warmth, and fire, as just said, that can burn and kill, but it can also warm and heal.
Sure.
So, and of course, me being me, the first thing I thought of was cooking, because I love to cook. But the fact that it's a duality is what I was going to bring up.
Okay. What about from the spiritual side?
Oh, it's also cleansing. It can
Okay.
cleanse.
But what else? But from the spiritual side, yes, Don.
A burning bush that is not consumed is effectively a torch, because a torch takes its fuel externally, but a torch isn't consumed either. Although it burns. So the image of a burning bush is that the fuel is coming from somewhere else.
Sure.
The fire is a spiritual fire.
Okay. Yes, Grace.
How about the fact that, the burning bush that's unconsumed, everybody has, great answers. I was thinking that, that God should be your guiding light, because the fire gives light.
Sure.
And I wrote something early in the comments.
Yes.
That it's twofold, because while God can provide for you, he can also take away from you, letting you know the difference between, he wants to be, with us and be honored by us. But, if we're not doing honorable things to our friends and family and loved ones, and then, he's going to have us pay the price for that. So.
All good points. All very good points. However, there was a reason I said spiritual. Has anyone ever experienced a burning desire?
Mm-hmm.
What does the bush represent to the Israelite people? Not just Moses. What is their burning desire?
Leadership.
Freedom.
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 And they're looking for a leader, yes, but their burning desire is freedom from slavery. And we've discussed the issue of slavery. It's not just people owning other people. We can create situations where we become a slave to our thoughts.
Mhm.
So, and we discussed that at great length, but you have to have that burning desire to end it, to move forward. Okay. And it's in essence, what everyone said about a fire is it's something that's transitory. It changes one state into another. But without that fire, you never see that change. So the people themselves they could have said, God could have appeared as a swan. Okay. But fire is something that is very, very important. And we expect everything to be changed from one state to another. But this is a special fire because God is not consumed by the fire. That spirit remains regardless. So this is the message. This is another potential message that comes from this. And what I'm saying is you've heard this before in other not only in our discussions, but in discussions elsewhere.
Isn't there something in the Torah, Marty, that's in the Torah that states, beware of fire and water?
Well, like anything else, too much fire within you turns you into a zealot.
What?
And you can a zealot.
Oh, zealot. Okay, I didn't hear you.
And in other words, what can happen is you can do extreme things that other people may not necessarily agree with. Okay, in the name of. Okay, and so you have to be very careful. Zealotry. Moses is a soft zealot. When we get to the story of Phineas, it's going to be a much, what should I say, raw experience. Okay, it's taking zealotry to another extreme. So we have to understand it and find our own balance somewhere. Okay. So the story goes on. I don't want to belabor this about the fire. Moses, this is where his humility allows him to make certain statements, and God then has to show him some miraculous events too, to really convince Moses that this is a truly miraculous experience, the whole thing, and God is behind it all. And you remember the hand, his hand goes into his blouse and comes out, and he has leprosy. He puts the hand back in, and that disappears. Is it sometime, why do we see this multiple times? Why is this going on? Why does Moses have to be convinced? Is the bush enough? Wouldn't the bush be enough?
Well, Moses was raised as an Egyptian, so he's probably feeling, a little confused, like, who am I to be this person? Because I was raised as this, and now you want me to lead these people who I've witnessed being mistreated? So he's kind of wondering what piece of the puzzle he is to represent. That would be very conflicting if I was in his shoes. And that's the basis of it, I would imagine. The bush isn't enough because he's perhaps very confused, and that's how I see it. I don't know if I'm right or wrong or whatever, but.
Well, do we learn anything from this part of the story? Yes, Suzanne.
I also think that the Egyptians practiced what I mean, we might loosely call the black arts, so to speak. So for Moses to fully comprehend God's power, he had to be convinced that God was stronger and above all these other entities that he might have encountered growing up.
Okay, so this is a battle between the dark side and the light side of the force, right?
So to speak.
So to speak. Okay. We get, how does Moses, after he sees all of this, he comes up with an excuse that, oh, I'm really not, I'm just a man. And not only just a man, but I have difficulties in speaking. I'm not what you're possibly looking for, right? What is that a sign of? Is he trying to get out of responsibility, or is he trying to is this an expression of his personality?
It is a sign of his basic honesty and truthfulness.
Yes, and humility.
That he does stutter and that he has trouble speaking. And God says that doesn't matter. I will tell you what to say. You can use your brother if you need as a spokesperson, but you're the one that I have chosen. And I think that that's part of how the friendship develops, through honesty.
Sure. But also he's it shows a little tendency towards being humble. He's learning something from Jethro and Jethro's family.
Is it humility or is it self-deprecation? He's putting himself down. And that's not necessarily being humble.
True. You want to explain that a little bit? There is a difference.
Oh, absolutely a difference. Well, self-deprecation is putting yourself down, making yourself lower than you are. Being humble is accepting who you are, but understanding that you're not the best. So that's kind of where I would put the line. It's like I hate when people say, don't be prideful. Hell, I'm proud of things I do. So some words can be taken either way, but humble and self-deprecating are very different.
Okay. David, did Wendy want to add something?
Part of it is that Moses was able to look ahead and see the enormity of what God was asking him to do.
Yes.
And he's thinking, I don't know if I've got enough self-confidence in me from everything I've done to see if I can really lead them. And he figures there are stronger men than I am, but for whatever reason, God's making the hero out of him.
Yeah. And he doesn't know he's going to be a hero yet. But
Right.
he, the first thing, in the military, when somebody asked for a volunteer, if a superior officer asked for a volunteer, it was usually determined by the one left standing alone after everyone else took a step back. And so, let's face it, nobody wants to, this is an awesome responsibility that is being laid on Moses.
Yeah.
And the first tendency, why me? I don't have enough to be this kind of a leader of everyone in the pack. And who am I in your presence?
There's one quote that I remember reading, and every time I look at that, it's like, you can't get over how smart it is. And the quote is this: you never know how strong you can be until strong is the only choice you have. And that's what God is saying to Moses. Well, you're strong, do it.
Yep. This is something that that's excellent, Wendy. That is a very important message also, and it's uplifting. From the right individuals, it gives you, it encourages your self-drive. That's all you can, your own, and that encouragement is also very important. I want to come back to God's name and the interpretations we had. I am what I am, I will be what I will be. And one of the things that's brought to mind is the story about manna. It tasted differently to everyone depending on their own interpretation of it. Any comments about that? And why is this so important? It's a very important concept that often leads us down, if we don't do it just right, we can be led down the wrong path. If everyone, and I use you collectively, everyone sees God a little differently, and it works for that person, who am I, who are we to say that that person is wrong?
I think it is the idea of a personal relationship. I suspect that God wishes to have a personal relationship with each of us, with you, Marty, with Michael, with all of you, with Donald, Grace. I think all of you I think he wants to have a personal relationship, and that relationship is going to be a little different.
Yes.
Based on your life experiences and other things.
Exactly.
If I could bring that,
Please.
bring it up to date today, that causes problems, unfortunately. But we don't see, not everybody sees God the same way. They have their own way to worship, and they have their own belief. Here, and that's what makes our country a great nation, because we allow that. There are some nations that don't allow that. You have to believe and see God the way we see it. And if you don't, you'll be jailed and possibly killed.
Okay, that's a good statement. Yes, Ricky, please.
Very simply, in the 12 steps, twice it says God as we understood him. But most people now say God as we understood God. We're degenderizing it. But that was a big issue when Alcoholics Anonymous started, because it came out of the Oxford group, which is a Christian group. And some of the early members said, oh, we don't need God at all. And then some said, oh, we got to have God, this way. So they all agreed. And it's even italicized when it's printed, as we understood God. So that every person in the room, and then that's why everybody says higher power, just so that you don't get hung up on the word God.
Right. You see this in imagery from around the world, especially in Christian iconography. In Africa, you see images of God as black.
Yeah.
In the Orient, they have Oriental characteristics with the almond eyes and all kinds of, and so it's how we see the world about us, and it's okay. But then this dovetails into a discussion about colonialism. Okay, and it has been a topic in that discussion. So you can understand that each group sees hears God as according to their own background. You remember we discussed the Mobius strip and the infinite line, that if you go draw a line on a Mobius strip, it comes back, two sides become one, and that line is never ending. It's not a circle. In no way is it a circle. But once you realize, and we had this discussion, once you realize that a line is made up of an infinite number of points, and if those points represent all of human existence, wait a minute, they're going to have a slightly different take when they look out away from that line. They're all trying to picture God in what they're able to imagine. And so out of respect, you don't want to say that's not the right way to believe in God. You can't. If you recognize that basic principle. Yes, Michael.
In Judaism, we pray. We have our very deep prayers to God, but there's no image. We don't have an image. We don't have that, see?
Mm-hmm.
And so that there's a it's almost like I don't know, maybe a safety net or something to that effect, because the most important part of Judaism is the praying to God, not any kind of that's why we don't have an image, we don't have statues and that type of thing.
Yeah.
But we have the knowledge of God within us and what we want God to do for us, why we pray, why we have the Yom Kippur service, but there's no image. The closest image we would have is the Torah itself.
Mm-hmm. Very good point. Very good point. So we had a discussion about all the plagues. It takes a long time to get Pharaoh to understand that what he's doing is wrong, and he still doesn't get it to the very end. One of the thoughts that crossed my mind hearing the group is that in our present day, we had a person who came closest to this type of Moses person in our own age. Okay. And that was Martin Luther King. He wasn't marching just for slavery and the black issue. He was marching for all people. Okay. His dream was that all people would be able to get along. And he says that. He says that it isn't just the blacks. The blacks were the tip of the iceberg. The Jewish experience, I will get to you, David, the Jewish experience, this is not just for the Israelites to come out of slavery, but in the wider context of slavery, that for the whole world. It is not unique for the Jews. This is the Jewish story. You can say, well, Martin Luther King, that was the black story. But the way they described it was universal. It was not for a particular individual. Yes, David.
With all due respect to what Michael had said earlier, is that we have no image of God. I do have an image of God. And when I think of him, my mind always goes to the Sistine Chapel and Michelangelo's painting of God touching Adam's hand and the face of God. That is my personal image of God.
Actually, there's a lot in that. That imagery is also dovetails into all of the discussion we've just had. God touches not with his hand, with a finger. And Adam reaches out to God not with his whole hand, it's his finger. It's a very, as David said, a very personal relationship. Okay? Michelangelo got it. He understood a lot. And I think there's more credit to be given to him, not just by the Christian churches, but also Judaism, also Islam, and a whole bunch of other people. This is all these other religions, they have a different way of expressing it, but this is a very important gesture. And it's much more than what just first meets the eye, because when you're touching someone by a finger, by the way, when you touch a baby, you usually will put your finger in its hand, okay, because it can't grasp your whole hand, but the imagery is very similar. Okay, yes, Don.
Marty, you said, and I thought I'd left this behind, but you said that even to the end, Pharaoh didn't get it. But I think there's this huge denial going on in Judaism that we read in black and white in Exodus that God hardened Pharaoh's heart and would not let him concede to Moses' demands. And I don't know why this is ignored, overlooked, denied. To me, it's absolutely fundamental to understanding what happened before the Exodus.
Right. And that, I think, is another lesson. There is another lesson in here. If you are intent on doing things a certain way, especially if you're going to do harm to others, as this story unfolds, maybe you have to learn lesson, no pun intended, the hard way. And that you have to be shown that that your thinking is wrong, your actions are wrong, and maybe it's okay, like a parent saying, well, go ahead and touch the stove. You'll learn that way that it's hot. Or maybe after somebody injures a cat and enjoys maiming it, okay, maybe that person has to learn before that person starts to do it to human beings that that's wrong. So maybe if the cat attacks the kid, or in a zoo situation, somebody is taunting an animal in the zoo, don't shoot the animal. Really come down harshly on the person that has caused the animal to behave that way.
That's a straw man argument, Marty, because that's not what the text says. The text says it's so clear.
We would do the same thing.
I, as a Jew, would like to be able to defend the slaughter of millions of Egyptians as a prelude to the exodus of the Jews from Egypt. And I can't do that. So anyway, I thought I'd left it behind.
I understand where you're coming from, but that is, the same discussion will come up again with how we treat the Canaanites. Okay, the same discussion will come up with several other issues that we will cover. And I know you're not the only person. There's another congregant, he's much older, Jerry Bellinger. He, in years past, he would always say the same thing, that he cannot reconcile in his mind. But as I have explained in the past, this is why we describe God, and the rabbis have made an attempt too, but God is a wrathful God, a God that doesn't forget. But how different is that from human behavior? I don't see any difference. So if you take somebody like Hitler, no matter what was tried beforehand, the world still had to go to war. All the diplomatic efforts. The same thing with the Ukraine in today's world, with Putin. When is he going to learn? So his heart is such that, well, maybe it needs to be hardened to the point where he really suffers. I don't know. That's a question we can't answer, Don. There's nothing in Scripture, there's nothing written anywhere that's going to give you a satisfying answer, other than God can be very good and God can be very bad. If you were discussing the book of Job, how could God do this to one person? And as it unfolds, God is taking a bet on Job's behavior from the devil.
I'm familiar with all those stories.
That's right. There's story after story.
This is singularly different, and I will leave it here because I'm diverting discussion too much.
Excuse me 1 second. Yes.
Okay, I just real quick, I have to get off because I have to go shopping for bagel breakfast for tomorrow. So I'm home in time for Shavua service tonight. But I just want to remind everybody that we do have a service, 7 o'clock. It will be streamed. And I gave Randy 5 pounds of cream cheese on Tuesday. And I have absolutely no idea what he's going to do with it, but it's forthcoming just for that. And I don't know why you've lost everybody here.
Maybe they too they don't want the rehash. They don't want the rehash.
Okay.
And I understand all the positives and negatives we've been having in our discussions. And there are some questions that there is no adequate answer for. Okay, I'm going to leave it at that. Because I know Jerry Bellinger would be in the same situation as Don, and it's important to bring up, is that proper behavior?
Okay, I will see everybody next week.
Thank you, Ruth Ann.
Bye-bye.
Take care. I assume Ricky is going to be in charge. Now, that was the phone ringing in the background. Yes, please, Suzanne.
Ever since I heard that the possibility of the word hardened can also mean honored, I subscribe to the honored translation. Because in my mind, God does not need to stack the deck. I mean, why would he? He's God. And well, I have a lot more there's a lot more I could say about what's going on and what I would refer to as the unseen realm, but I won't go there. But I just want to say that I prefer the use of the word honor.
Okay, thank you. Then we have the rest of this story where we are the Israelites are going to go out into the wilderness. Why does the Passover story begin with the Israelites going out into the wilderness? What are some reasons that you can think of? What does the wilderness represent? Yes, Suzanne.
I think it represents chaos and I don't know, possibly sin.
It could. Yeah, I tend to look at it, if you think about right from the get-go, God is making order out of chaos
Mm-hmm.
in the days of creation and how things come about. And in my mind, it's a battle between God and chaos all the time. And we run into that in many situations in our lives that are upheavals, if you will. Yes, David.
I think that the wilderness, on the other hand, also represents peace and simplicity. So when one is depressed and dejected, one tends to shed all of the minutia and go seek what's essential. And that is where the wilderness comes in, I think.
Excellent point. Excellent point. So we can look at this as from different standpoints. So Passover, the Seder, is order. Man is going to now conduct a service dealing with order, not just God. Okay, so it's an interesting new take on the Seder. The book is very specific. 2 chapters, and then an addendum later on to explain the whole necessity and the prescription of doing how you go about the Passover service and why you do this every year as a reminder. It's not just as a one-time deal. It's going to be forever. Any further comments on that? Any other comments about that experience? Okay. Then we get into further into the Exodus story. We are got some pages stuck to one another. That'll teach me to drink water while I'm going through this. And it goes into even more detail about the plagues and hardening of Pharaoh's heart. And then is what happens to the Egyptians. Don gets very upset when we go through this, because yes, many people are killed as a result of this. Is this a play on your conscience? Is this here to play on our conscience? That in retribution, we want something as horrible as occurred to us to occur on other people. And is it correct? Okay, this is something that is fundamental, and Don brings this to our attention to discuss this all the time. Hi, Don, you're back. Okay, but you're muted. But it's a very important concept.
I've been here all the time. Yeah.
Okay, we can talk about retribution, but then what are we told about retribution and hatred? some people had comments before when we spoke about what befell the Jewish people and befell the army of the Egyptians. Is hatred something, what does hatred do? Does it make you feel good or is it damaging? Or both? Okay, I see Grace's hand, and then Suzanne, I think you're thinking
Yeah,
about
yeah.
raising your hand. Okay. Yeah.
Two wrongs don't make a right. So, if I'm feeling I want to make them feel as bad as I do, or, retribution or hatred, it's just, it's wrong all the way around. It doesn't feel good. It's not good towards, perhaps the Geneva Convention is just now invented, or, it's, here it comes, right? Even though that we have prisoners, we must treat them with respect, even if we haven't been respected. It's just a display of human kindness. And God was torn about, he was crying after the Exodus and all the Egyptian people were drowned and mauled in the Red Sea. It's a loss of human life, and it's just wrong. It's just wrong, no matter how we slice it up. And I've said this before, no one wins in war. No one wins in war.
Right. Excellent statement. Suzanne, you were going to say something too.
Yeah, I just, God loves us all, no matter our race, creed, whatever. He loves us all. And when the Israelites were cheering over the death of the Egyptians, I mean, God said something about that. I mean, he did not find their death something to cheer about. And I think also because God knew what was going to happen to them, in, well, what we call the afterlife, I guess we could put it that way. So we're meant to forgive, have compassion, but we're not meant to hate.
Okay.
It
Why does
doesn't mean
God-
we can't defend ourselves if someone is trying to do us harm. I mean, that's fine, but we should not rejoice
Okay.
in the harm that comes to someone else.
Sure. Good point. So why does God cry? Why is it described as that? Why would God cry at this destruction of the Egyptian people and the Egyptian army? Why would he cry? Go back to the book of Exodus. Noah, towards the end of the flood, what does God say?
It will never destroy mankind again.
Do you think God is crying because he went back on his word
Mm-mm.
and realized he forgot
Okay, honey.
something he swore before? Is he very human? How many times do we say, we'll never do something again? And then we do it, and then we feel even greater remorse. Maybe that's an attribute of God too. I know some people would say, oh, he would never, but in other words, does God have a conscience too? I can't answer it, but I can raise the question. And maybe the story is the way it is to make us think about the behavior more than anything else. Because we go down the road, retribution or things like that never works. We're still fighting World War I. Okay, it's never any completion. How the Germans were treated by the rest of Europe, oh, you could say it was justified, but wait a minute. What we did to the German economy, what we did to all the people following World War I, they could never come out of their situation. And it gave rise to another person who said, I can solve this. And then you get World War II. And then the world comes up with a different way. Well, maybe we shouldn't have been so harsh. Maybe we had to try to redevelop the world. Maybe it's, as Victor, it's our responsibility. And then we run into the problems with all the subsequent conflicts that have taken place. Every generation has seen war. We can go back to European history and the same thing was going on throughout the centuries. Yes, Don.
Yeah, we know from Genesis that God can be negotiated with Sodom and
Yes.
Gomorrah.
Yes.
And in terms of who he'll spare and who he won't. We don't see any of that in Exodus, right? I haven't noticed it. There's no
correct.
negotiation. I mean, it is what it is, and there's no discussion. So it's it's even more destructive in Exodus than it was in Genesis. So what's going on with that?
Do you think the story is there to fear God?
Well, of course. I mean, we see what God's capable of doing, but we know that you asked earlier, does God have human tendencies? And in Sodom and Gomorrah, we see that, yeah, he did lighten up.
Yeah, what two people survive? Well, no, a few more, but it's very limited. That's right. That's right.
So, but that was the end. I mean, we don't see that anymore.
Mm-hmm. So yes, Suzanne, I'll shut up.
I don't see the Egyptians drowning as God going back on his word. I mean, to me, there's a big difference between destroying the entire planet with every living thing than a specified situation. I mean, to me, it's the Red Sea. It'll always be the Red Sea. When the wall of water comes down on the Egyptians. And as far as God being upset, if these people were not saved, and by virtue of their paganism, they weren't. I mean, their eternal life is literally going to be hell. So, and God knows this, so of course he's going to be upset.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's given us all free will.
Sure.
And how we choose to use that free will is entirely up to us. And we can use it for good or for evil. So, I mean,
Okay.
That's all I have to say.
You've made some good comments there too. And with the Passover service, there's a lot that goes into it. In Exodus 12, okay, it says that it's very specific. If a stranger who dwells with you would offer the Passover to the Lord, all his males must be circumcised. Some of this is changed over time. Okay. Then he shall be admitted to offer it. He shall then be a citizen of the country. But no uncircumcised person may eat of it. It's a little harsh also. Today we bend the rules. We invite Christian friends and other groups of people to the Passover service. When we bend the rules, is that a flagrant violation of what's supposed to be? Any ideas there? Yes, Suzanne.
Yeah, I think it is a violation. However, in defense of Christians, these rules do not apply to us.
Very good point.
So
These rules
doesn't really
occur,
matter.
that's right.
Yeah.
But for the Israelites, for Jewish people today, inviting people from other religions to join in the Passover, we no longer insist, and we don't double check, to see if we don't insist on everyone being circumcised, all men being circumcised.
White women.
But the point is, though, there's been in more modern times a little shift in the thinking. Yes, David, that was a Wendy hand.
Yeah, you know what? Think of it like this. Times have changed.
Yes.
And inviting somebody that is not Jewish into your Passover Seder, it's good PR. It's good advertising for your religion so they understand what things are. We had a friend a few years ago that, his son was taking a class, I think, on religions. And when David and I went to the final High Holy Day service, he came with us because he wanted to see what it was all about.
Yes.
And it was very interesting because people don't realize what we're doing. So, and if they're happy with what we do, then we've done our job. We've advertised it well. We're not trying to convert people.
Well, I think that, so in the scheme of things,
Well, you
is
could,
oh, go ahead. Yes, go ahead. Please, Michael.
yeah, you could, thanks, Marty. You could see the shift in the thinking from Orthodox
Yes.
to conservative, to Reform, to Reconstruction. You can see it, all these, the shift in thinking between these denominations, so to speak.
Good point. Good point. So, so these changes really are healthy as civilization changes. Maybe that's one of the reasons why the Jewish religion has survived so long, because of adaptation to the circumstances. I don't know. Yes, David. Wendy has something else to say.
Well, if you think about it, in this day and age, there's a lot of blended families. We have a blended family. Our daughter and her family are Catholic, and we've taken the Passover Seder to them so they understand what Passover is. And on Hanukkah, we sing the blessings with them every single night. And even though they can't read a word of Hebrew, they can pretty much do a good job singing right along with us. So I think there's nothing wrong with it. It's like being the Good Samaritan, no matter what religion you are.
Excellent, excellent point. Any other comments? Well, we know that they come to the Sea of Reeds. Oh, by the way, you know that I enjoy reading Jonathan Sacks. In one of his books, there's a typo. He starts off by saying Sea of Reeds, and somewhere along the line, there's a line that says Red Sea. So it's a typographical error. He emphasizes initially, but even printers can make mistakes.
Maybe it's not a typo. Maybe it's meant that way.
Well, he knows otherwise, that it's not the sea, that it's not the Red Sea, it's the Sea of Reeds. So and we've had that discussion before, but it can happen to the best of us. making a little slip up. But I can't blame it on him. That I think is a printer's typo or editor's misinterpretation, trying to fit all the typeface into a particular line. And but anywho, then we got to the point we discussed the Moses poem or song and Miriam's dancing and singing. We discussed those, which brings up an interesting thing to think about. I don't want to take up a lot of time, but give it some thought. Some people do not want any music at all during a service. They want to read everything verbatim and the only thing that's chanted is Torah. Okay. And that is an interesting discussion in and of itself. That takes up a good solid hour, but it's something to think about. How do you express yourself? And we've tried to bring in poetry and all kinds of, and literature. David is an expert on that. We've tried to bring in so many other ways. And it isn't until later on we get a glimpse of it here that the dancing and singing is okay, but you don't want it to be wild. But you do want, but it's going to come up, art is going to come up a theme in 3 whole verses of Torah later on. So art as an expression of love and creation. Yes, Michael. Michael, you're muted.
Just very quickly, the Orthodox and the Conservative, they're on the Shabbat, Friday night or Saturday, there's no music. There is singing, only singing.
Yes.
But in the Reform, that's changed. And so I would say on the Shabbat, why? And I would have to divert this question to the rabbis, unless that has changed. The sounding of the shofar is not done on the Shabbat. But the playing of music is. So I want to know, kind of get from their perspective, what's that all about? Okay, because it's very
I
confusing.
can't answer it. I do not know, but I can say that some people interpret the Sabbath as solemn, and others interpret it as a day of joy,
Well,
of
that's
celebration of the
well,
creation.
that's why I often say, is the Shabbat observed or is it celebrated? Or is it both?
Probably both. And but there's this dovetails. That's why I said the discussion will go on for at least an hour. This is something that you may want to ask the rabbi to do as a 1-hour session at some time in the future, because there are different schools of thought here. Excellent, Michael. Now, the trials that the Israelites have to go through. We've mentioned that. And we've spoken about trials with water, trials with food, sustenance, okay? Trials with battle, okay? Why are the trials thrown in here? What do these adverse situations do? Why are they in this a part of the story? Okay, think about raising a kid. Okay. As a parent, you went through trials every day. Okay. The kid is also going to interpret as going through trials every day.
Well, then it would be about heavily weighted towards teaching.
Okay. But what is being taught? You complain about water. Okay, I'll give you water. Oh, wait a minute, I'm going to wait. You have to listen and wait until there's an oasis further down the road. Okay, food is going to be scarce. I'll give you lots of food to eat, and you interpret it the way you want that food to taste. And how you can determine how to prepare it, whatever you want to do. What message is being sent here?
Learning to obey or take orders and dealing with them.
All right. What else? There's another text that we can go on. Yes, Suzanne.
Learning to trust God.
Faith. Yes. Faith. These are tests of faith. Okay, okay, it said God will provide. Okay, and there are jokes to that extent, which we've expressed in previous years, but there's a level of faith that in everything that is happening, and it's not just as was mentioned, trust. There are lots of words that we can use to describe that faith. But how do we express that faith? Yes, is that a Wendy hand again?
Yes, but it goes back.
Okay.
It goes back to what you were saying before, about the faith. Why do we give them the food and they've got to figure out what to do with it? Well, isn't that like instead of giving someone the fish, he's giving them the fishing rod? So that, like Michael was saying, this way they can learn to fish and do for themselves. And that's just, birds do it once their little birds are out of the nest. They stay with them for 2 days and then they say, you're on your own.
That's right.
Another way I think to express faith is patience.
Okay. All right. That's another way. Faith that you have to deal with patience, faith that they will eventually come to understand and do it a particular way. Yes. Don.
Yeah, one companion of slavery is learned helplessness. The term used today. So
Very good.
So the Hebrews coming out into the wilderness, they had no experience with learning how to cope. So everything was dependent on the Pharaoh for everything. So now they got to learn how to deal with it.
Good point. Good point. Suzanne, you had your hand up, I think, first.
Right. I think that we also have to learn how to develop a relationship with God.
Okay.
Which
you said it
is
very
like, they did not have it initially. Yeah.
Right. It's more than just believing. Faith is something more than just believing. You're going to conduct your life a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
good
you
point.
you have to have a bunch of learning experiences, good or bad. You have to go through those experiences. Think about kindergarten and what you may remember from kindergarten, what you had to learn, how to get along with all those other kids in the class, how to get along with a different authority from your parents, what was expected of you. But very important that through all of this, you developed a good or even better way of achieving for yourself. You had to have faith in yourself.
could be a foundation.
Yes, that's another way of putting it. That's another way of putting it. But you have to, and the hope is that you will believe in yourself. It's not just believe in God, but believing in yourself as a human being with all of our bad qualities as well as good qualities, that we can still do it and come through it, and we can learn what is right and wrong. We'll be able to recognize it. We'll be able to do something about it. Maybe is God trying to do something different with mankind? Is God trying to say you have it within you? You can do it too. You can recognize all these weaknesses and strengths. And how do you emphasize the strengths rather than the weaknesses? You have to have faith in yourself that you can move forward and grow. Yes, Don.
Anyone who's been through survival school in the military. gets it.
Exactly. Good example.
Exodus is where it started.
Yeah, it's another way of putting it. And so we had the story of Amalek, and we discussed that before, but that's another test. It isn't the fact that Moses is raising his hand and lowering it, the battle flow, the tides of battle flow with the movement of his hand. No, that's not. It's again a test of faith, another concept, and a test that you have enough faith in yourself that you can do it. That you can do it. You may need a little help, but you can do it if you try. You don't try, nothing. You don't. You lose. You lose if you never try. You never know what could have been. And again, that faith in yourself is your own personal hope in yourself. Not just what we see here in the story, but the Israelites have to have that. They have to have that desire, that burning desire to move forward, to go through a desert, any kind of desert. We all experience that we're going to eventually get through this as a group, helping each other, but also the group helping each individual. And then a lot can be achieved with the next step. And after poor Moses is doing all of this, okay, he's going, and the people are coming to him with everything under the sun, okay, because they look at him as the intermediary with God. Along will come Jethro, okay, and we will get to Jethro next week. I don't want to give this story short shrift. I know we have only 10 minutes left, but I said too much. That's why it took so long to get here. But this story means a lot. It's not just there for us to just read and get to race through the book and that's it. But what are the lessons we can learn from all of this? That's more, to me, more important anyway. Anyway, any other questions about what we've discussed or things like that? Well, Ruth Ann had announcements. Michael, would you like to comment about your playing the piano at the upcoming bagel breakfast?
Okay, if you insist. Yeah, I'm gonna do a little something different tomorrow at the bagel breakfast. In the way of music, I'll be performing. Let's see, some Yiddish, some Hebrew, some Fiddler on the Roof music, which I normally don't do. I just do the regular standards. So I'm going to do that tomorrow in dedication to, I think it was May, that it was a Jewish American History Month. So that's why I decided to do that for tomorrow between 9:30 and 10. while I'm thinking about that, something occurred to me, Marty, that I thought might be an interest to everybody. You know, what I find interesting is sounds and voices and that type of thing, because that's been my profession. You know, the music and sounds, and it's very interesting that I listen to everybody here on this Zoom Torah study, and it's very interesting that everybody has such a distinct, different voice. Very, very interesting. Now, the reason I mentioned that is you have, in a way of identification, you have fingerprinting, you have DNA, and you have now voice printing, which is a way to identify people. Now, there's sometimes that people have very similar voices, so similar that you can't tell with the human ear, but that's what the voice print does, because no one has exactly 100% the same voice as another person. So I just thought, and then also can include an accent, which is part of that. So I just thought that would be interesting, that's all.
Okay, well, you're sort of supporting the points that we tried to make with a good, solid example. Anyway, wish all of you a very healthy and good week, and see you next Saturday.
Yeah, thank you, Marty, very much.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Shalom, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.